We used to do 36 hours duties and we never burned out, but that was old times. The topic was not there. When I do day to day, I have to do greatest good. What is greatest good? I have to treat every individual patient. But when it comes to mass casualty, then I have to treat those patients who will benefit from medical interventions. This is very, very important. This is crisis standard of care. This is a legal document. The second is airway, the third is breathing, and fourth is circulation, where you check for radial pulse and check for capillary refill time. But first thing you assess is catastrophic hemorrhage. First thing is security. Security should ensure crowd control internally as well as externally.
Hello, thank you for tuning in. If you want to come back to this video later, just tap on the like button. It will save it to your liked videos so it's easier to find. And don't forget to hit on the bell icon to get notified whenever we drop new content. Stay curious, keep learning, and see you on the inside.
Wish you all a very happy new year, and thank you Netflix for getting me back again and again for things which I really love to do, and one of that is my this EM chit chats. I hope my screen is visible to you all.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And then I am going to be talking, and I would look forward for active participation, because see, the session talks about emergency care in multiple casualties, and all of us, believe me, have one, whether we are at a clinical lead role, whether we are in a nursing role, whether we are as a hospital administrator role, whether we are a private practitioner, and but because of that innate nature to help, we would be definitely rushing and trying to help as much as possible in terms of multiple casualties. Now, friends, when I was asked to do this session, so I am a ADLS, Advanced Disaster Life Support instructor, and that course is about a course of 3 days. So I was just wondering how to get that 3 days into 1 hour, and that too, which helps you to tomorrow be more confident when you will be dealing with multiple casualties. However, there is still a possibility that one or two things may be missed, which I look forward that you will ask me in questions at the end of the session. So without further ado, with permission of everyone, if my slide, could you see the second slide? And I move forward. If you can just tell that the slide changed.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So, mass casualty is incidents are those disasters or major incidents where the quantity, the severity, and the diversity of patients. Three things. Like QRS complex is there, here QDS complex is there. Quantity, diversity, and severity. All three types of patients, all three categories of patients, they will rapidly overwhelm the ability of our local medical resources. Now, I work in a tertiary care center. My emergency medicine department is 104 bedded. Huh? Any one of you might be working with a 5 bedded ED, working with a 10 bedded ED. So for me, mass casualty is when I receive total 100 patients at a time. Correct, because whatever was my emergency unit capacity, that entire capacity is overwhelmed. So your capacity is your in place individual capacity. For example, if there is a fire in a nearby place, and you have a clinic or a small nursing home, and you have some 5 or 6 beds, then your mass casualty is defined by your facility, availability of beds and personnel. So please do understand this fact, that the threshold when you will call it mass casualty differs from place to place. but definitely it should include the quantity, that is the number, the diversity, that is someone who will be having because fire was there, he jumped out of the window from some floor above to save himself, and he may, instead of having a burn related injury, that patient has a trauma related injury. Someone who will come with burns, someone who is coming just because there is a carboxyhemoglobin and lactate levels high because of smoke, someone who would come with smoke inhalational injuries. So I'm just giving an example of the diversity and that severity. So let us now deep dive into understanding how to manage it. One thing is very clear, that it can happen anywhere, anytime. And it all not only impacts those who are directly involved in that accident or incident, it involves also the healthcare workers, it also involves the entire community. And I'm sure you understand that, because all of us who are presently here have gone through a 2 years of COVID, which was also a medical disease and all, a disaster. Okay, so we know that it involves the entire community, as well as the doctors who are taking care of it, or the healthcare workers who are taking care of it, or the patients themselves. Why is those who are working in emergency get involved more? Because they are the first line of contact in any emergency. Where will the patient runs to? He or she will run to an emergency. So, but alone emergency medicine can do anything, they can treat all this, they can take care of all the mass casualty, is not correct. They have to have good collaboration and coordination with various teams, and that is what is mass casualty management of the hospital. So this can be a regular day in your ED, in your emergency unit, wherein regular influx of patients are coming. It is always hectic in emergency because diversity is still there. In my emergency, my first case would be chest pain, second will be shortness of breath, third will come with some sepsis, fourth will come with some pain abdomen, then with trauma. So diversity is always there, but it is coming one after the other. It is not overwhelming my emergency department. Okay, because my hospital is able to, has the capacity to meet whatever is demand. Suddenly outside there is a burst of activity. Okay, so the bigger photograph, you can see that there was some accident nearby, and the way they are bringing the patients, what you would have loved to receive those patients would be in a small clip I have kept on the right upper corner of the screen. You want everyone to be coming with EMS, coming with proper stabilization on the wheelchair, but how people will come is like this. Now you have to understand, I am not going to delve into the field response, because field response we are not covering here. We are covering here the hospital response. Okay, so in the field response, there will be two type of patients. One who will be told by those who are going there in the field, be it fire, be it police, be it pre-hospital people, they will follow a triage rule over there. Okay, and in their triage rule, the first thing they will say, those patients who can walk can come to right side of our stage or left side of our stage, or some pillar they can identify. They will be given medicines, or they will be given medical attention earlier. That will separate all your green patients from those who need your red patients, who need your attention more. Okay, now why red is a color of emergency, so by red I mean they will be more emergent. However, just remember that initially, when who are coming to your emergency are mostly 80% green patients. So if you will take all these patients inside who are green means they will not have any life or limb threatening problems. Okay, they are coming by themselves, they might be bleeding, they might have some fracture, they might have some small burn, which I will discuss as we will progress, but they are walking patients. Okay, if you will take all the walking patients inside in your the emergency unit, then there will be no space to take the real emergencies which will arrive with the ambulance a little later. So the first point you have to understand is the initial patients which you will reach after a nearby or disaster or mass casualty, bus truck collide, or whatever you say, would be green patients, because as a because they would be able to walk, they can go in their own vehicles, they will try to run to hospital early. So we have to ensure that how to triage them at the hospital door. Because why this is very important, because if one, the mortality will increase because acute event has happened, then there is another group of patients which are lying already in your emergency department. That those patients also will, if we will concentrate our whole attention on these new patients, these patients will have a issue. So remember this dictum: ensuring the greatest good for those who will benefit the most with medical interventions. What does it mean? I will tell you later, but let us think like this lady. She says that if you are an emergency unit staff member, you are in the front line of health system, and it is your key role you have to play to ensure effective emergency response. Okay, it is your team which will be the first point of contact for many people. So it is your responsibility to recognize time sensitive conditions. And you need to also identify which patients require resuscitations, who are the ones who are just severely wounded, and who will require definitive care, and you have to deliver for those patients. Definitive care means someone has a laceration, you have to suture it. Till you don't suture and you send him, even if you ask him to go, he will not go. So that is, there are some patients where you will do definitive care in the emergency department itself in times of emergency, mass casualty. Okay, so let us now, after giving you a little idea about what is the mass casualty, let us discuss how does it differ from your day-to-day practice. So I already said to you, my day-to-day practice, one after the other casualties come. They are called as multiple casualties. Like I have 100 beds, I get 100 patients in a day. Okay, but one after the other they are coming. One is going inside, is being seen. Yeah, sometimes two or three ambulances come at the same time, but then it does not overwhelm my emergency unit. Why? Because already I have more beds. Correct. But when it comes to mass casualty, many patients come at the same time. So when I do day to day, I have to do greatest good. What is greatest good? I have to treat every individual patient. But when it comes to mass casualty, then I have to treat those patients who will benefit from medical interventions. This is very, very important. This is crisis standard of care. This is a legal document. See, if you get someone who has fallen, again coming back to that fire, someone has jumped out of the balcony to escape from fire, and his brain, there is a GCS is now 3, his brain is fractures are there, brain matter is protruding out. Obviously he's breathing some 4 to 5 breaths. Will he benefit from your medical interventions? No. There is futility of care, there is palliative needs, maybe some pain relief, that's it. So this crisis standard of care is a beautiful document which has to be available in all the hospitals, which because that is what is followed in emergency, and I will show how we follow that. But remember, in mass casualties we will treat those patients who will benefit with our medical interventions. And when it is large scale disasters, now large scale disasters means that the entire city, so there is some terrorist attack in a small place, it's different. But if it is widespread, the entire city, they are roaming around and they're killing people, then you have to look out, do treat the potential survivors. So sometimes it is the same, the wording is different, but we will understand in our next slides how management is done for mass casualty incidents. So as I said, MCM is mass casualty management plan, which is a standard crisis of care standard document. It is prepared and kept beforehand only. It is not that, oh, the bus has overturned 50 kilometers away, so what should we do? Let us first meet who all are needed. Okay, anesthetist is needed, surgeon is needed, orthopedician is needed, neurosurgeon is needed. So all of them will come and sit at that time and start thinking while the patients are coming in. Do you think it will help? It will not help. So this MCM plan, which is a legal document, it's a legal document. Why it is a legal document? Because in that bus crash, there were few patients who, would, if you would have done some neurosurgical intervention, intubated them, possibility that they would have survived even if brain dead. Possibility, correct? But because you chose to treat only those who will benefit from medical interventions and you left them behind, they succumbed to the in the ED. So tomorrow, who will save you from the legal? Suppose attendant goes and goes to the court that when my patient was brought to the emergency department, he was breathing and he has opened his eyes, but these people did not give it importance to that person. They were taking care of other person. Correct. So therefore, a manual of your plan should be written, should be verified, should be discussed, and also discussed with the legal team of your hospital. So we can always say that there is in government hospital, who is the legal team? The maximum support is in the government. The maximum government support, legal support is in the government hospitals. The point is that who should prepare it. Okay, and most of the time emergency departments are also the along with hospital administrators are involved in it. Now what do you want to prepare what should be definitely there in the document? Obviously crisis care, standard of care, it should be there, huh? Next, it should be aligned to wider health facility. Like suppose I have 100 beds, I will say I have 40 ventilators. Okay, so I will say I can take 40 patients and put them on ventilator. Correct. Now you have another person has 10 bedded and one ventilator. So if my manual plan says that 40 patients can be done on ventilator, then it is not on a wider health facility. Correct. It should be applicable everywhere, so that whether the manual is opened in tertiary care hospital versus whether the plan manual is open in a primary hospital, it should address both needs. So right from pre-hospital till the definitive care, the manual should be complete. And believe me friends, sometimes it is easier to do what is already done instead of trying to bring out your own manual. And WHO has a wonderful MCM plan, and I am also discussing to you with what WHO, World Health Organization, suggests. Now, it should be generic that anyone can implement it, activate it, and assign tasks. Now, I'll tell you why. So head of emergency is there. Obviously, the patient's influx starts at 3 a.m. in the morning. Either you are ready to go at a time and every time, or you should ensure that it is so generic that anyone can enough. See, there should be a hierarchy collapse when mass casualty happens. Okay, so that is very, very important. We have to make sure that every unit, every time, one person is there who can initiate this. Okay, there should be all stakeholders, Most of them are trauma, so most of the surgical anesthesiologists, emergency physicians, even physicians, because sometimes pulmonologists. So every stakeholder should have representation in that. Now, adopting capability based planning. Now, this is very important word, capability based planning. So what is, so suppose your hospital is near the sea facing, or near the seas, the city is there. What happens is drownings may come to you suddenly. Okay, tsunami related accidents can come to you suddenly. I live in Deccan Plateau. These things don't affect me. So your plan should also be uh, upgraded, or means attend to your environment. What is happening around you? What sort of emergencies you are dealing? They should be definitely in your plan as an additional appendix. Don't rely on ranks, hierarchy before implementing the step. If everything is in the manual and if you are following the manual, then what whosoever starts it should initiate it as soon as possible, because saving lives is all we have to do. Greatest good to the greatest number of people who will benefit with medical interventions. Now, please refer to the WHO MCM plan. It is very complete. It can help you out immediately. You don't need to, put up your own plan, do your own things. Though meeting together every month, if you are from a hospital, every month the team should meet. Every month, youngsters should be involved, because they will come out with good ideas, and the seniors can give their life experience, what they have experienced, what are the problems. So there is that way the plan can be more stronger. Now I will tell you what are the operational phases of plan. So one is the baseline, you know baseline routine preparedness. As I said, it cannot start when the bus has overturned. It has to be there from right from start. There has a baseline readiness which should be there, and that baseline readiness consists of one, the plan book present, one, kits present. What is their green triage kit, what is the yellow triage kit, what is the red triage kit? These should be present somewhere in the near the emergency department or in the emergency department, so that at that point of time we are not running to surgical stores, medical stores. These are not correct way, because that causes more chaos, and more patients will suffer if the things will not be available. Okay, so this is a daily routine. Routine preparedness means that I will be discussing when we go on rounds, seniors, that would you do if disaster, what how would you triage differently, how would you manage this case, if this case was okay, it has come with multiple casualties, so you have done all the possible efforts. What if your case would have come with 40 other patients? So this sort of discussions, healthy discussions on rounds or during a coffee break, will help everyone to know. And what is most important is involving your team. And team is not about doctors only, team is about nurses, even about our workers. Now, why I am talking of hospitals? Because it is plans are in hospitals, but then everyone should know. Okay, so team is about everyone who works in the hospital, so we have to involve all of them. Then comes full activation. Now, who will activate? So let's say the head of department of emergency receives a call from RMO that we just saw it on the television, or we got a call from the secretariat. Most of the time in most of the states, political people call and tell that we would be shifting, let's say, 50 cases to your emergency, like this. So you the head of the emergency, or the head of the emergency in hospital administrator, should become the incident commander. Okay, once he receives the news, it is his job to activate the full plan. Okay, so first thing to activate the full plan is, which is that your emergency department, 50 patients are coming, already 50 patients are inside. What will you do? How will you take the patients? None of us can say that we keep one ward empty for disaster cases. If we are keeping, please do talk to me, tell me that, oh, we are keeping these many beds always empty, because we are not keeping. So where to shift these 50 patients? So the head of emergency will become the clinical lead. He or she will start doing reverse triaging. What is reverse triaging? Reverse triaging is that all those who can be shifted to some other place, they will shift those patients to those place, so that the entire emergency 50 beds will become red triage. I hope you are understanding my point. See, your emergency department has 50 beds, suppose. Part of the beds will be red, part of the beds will be yellow, parts of the beds will be green. Okay. And how do we differ? Red will have a resuscitation bay, every bed will have monitor, every bed will have suction. Whereas yellow will have share the monitor between 2 beds or 3 beds, and green will have a monitor between 5 beds, as per NMC, as per the requirement, if you are under NMC. Or but once this MCM phase 1 is declared full activation, the entire emergency becomes red zone. I hope you are understanding my this very important point. And when it becomes a red zone, then all those patients who are lying over there have to be shifted. So decision is by the clinical lead only. The clinical lead is the head of emergency services. And head doesn't mean head at 3 a.m. The senior most clinician of emergency, even if in the night is the senior resident, becomes the clinical lead. Okay. So he or she takes the decision of shifting out these patients. Now, if suppose you want to shift these 50 cases, but the accepting departments, they were neurosurgery cases, let's say. Neurosurgery says, no, we don't have beds. Where will we shift? Where will we take? We don't have beds. Then what you will do? This happens very regularly with us. Okay. So what we have to do, we have to open the OTs, we have to open the post of wards, because what is going to happen in post of wards, they will close after the OT, 4 5 hours after OT is over, 8 p.m. those will close. Because so these places, all the patients who are on ventilator can go in these places, and those patients who are green and all can go even in OPDs, those who are not requiring oxygen. So this is full activation. You have to empty your emergency unit to get the next patient. Okay. Once your incident commander tells you that the last patient has arrived, we were thinking of 50th patient has arrived from there, then you can start de-escalating. Emergency unit can start de-escalating, but by that time surgeons would be working with full capacity, because in those 50 cases 20 were lined up for OT, 30 were lined up for wound care and all. So you can emergency unit, EU can declare de-escalation, but that means that still there would be certain departments who would working in full capacity. Okay. So this is your phase 2, and the phase 3 is recovery, when almost all the cases who have come to you have been cleared from emergency, and what you tell is start doing is replenishment. So your medicines are over, consumables, kits, some equipment got damaged, and you do some staff debriefing, and you go back to the phase 0, which is baseline preparedness. Okay. These are very important steps. Step 1 was baseline prepare. 0 was baseline preparedness. 1 was full activation. 2 was de-escalation, and 3 is recovery. There is one more phase, which is actually not a phase but an intermediate state, which is between baseline preparedness and full activation, and that is called as heightened readiness. The moment they called, the RMO calls you, saying MS calls that we have received 50 patients will be coming, you will be in heightened readiness. Whatever was your baseline preparedness, you will start checking. Oh, who is there? Okay, should I call more staff? What should I find out? Where have I kept my crisis of care? Is my team in the evening knowing all those things? So there are a lot of things, and heightened readiness only is about clearing your beds. Okay, till the first patient comes, which is full activation. So now, declaring, I have already told you in my initial slides that you have to declare the plan open, or the activation of the plan, when your threshold is reached, and threshold is 50 if you have a bed of 50. Okay, all these are parts of it. So I've talked to you about legal protection of staff. I've said now crowd control we will talk, because we have to talk of staff and patient safety. Supplies are very important, and we'll discuss the communication, we'll discuss safe movement of patients, we will discuss, and very important point is patient dignity, privacy, and confidentiality. Okay, we'll go through all these points: triage, clinical zones, incident command team, staff search, managing the dead patients, managing the media, caring for family, some operational debriefing, and most important is psychological impact on staff. So I'm a little old timer. I never studied when burnout was a topic. We worked for round the clock. My training is anesthesia, and we used to do 36 hours duties, and we never burned out. But that was old times. The topic was not there. But now burnout is there. There is a big topic, big discussions. A lot of things are happening, and we respect that. Our generation respects everything, so we respect that, and so we are very, very sure that we have to take care of the psychological support of staff, because it is not easy to go through this much of issues, especially when you see people dying and you have applied a standard crisis of care. So now crowd activity. Worst thing is people rushing inside and you not even finding space between the trolleys, and you don't know how to do that, because who is taking care of this? So let's say after that bus collapse which happened, initially you saw some green patients coming running to you, and now this is the entire crowd which is outside your hospital, this picture. Okay, so what happens is, I will show you, this was all those points. Can you tell me, by if this is the picture in front of your hospital, what all has not been taken care? Plan was there, you knew the operational phases, you have invested in routine preparedness, you must be doing mock drills for MCM plan, you identified your threshold, mine was 50, you activated your plan. But what we did not do was crowd control. And once crowd control is not there, rest all of the things after this will suffer. So let us see here. So outside the ED there was a problem, inside the ED there is a problem. See this picture. Are you able to make out who is a doctor over here? Who is a nurse over here? Patients probably we are able to make out because they are sitting on the bed. Who is the relative out there? Who is the nurse out there? No. Why we are not able to make out? Because we don't want to wear vests. See, you have to have your identification. Otherwise, media person will enter like he is there in this photograph and start taking photographs, and you will not even know when these photographs leaked. So for that reason, it is very important that in our preparedness, we should have like these people who work on roads now, they will wear that they can be seen for far away, like those vests with clear cut roles is written. It is very important because we will know who is doing. So maybe the two ladies who are standing with their back towards her are doctors, but because we have they cannot be made out. There can be someone taking this camera and saying no doctor was available, and then next day morning we are getting all this. It is okay if we wear our white aprons, if we wear it with pride, but please get yourself identified, nurses also identified, workers also identified. So there has to be a dress code, and if it is a high visibility vest, it is the best. Okay. Now these are the these are the four roles which are most important. I told you the senior most of emergency department becomes the clinical lead. If HOD is there, he becomes. If SR is there, in that time he becomes. Whosoever is the senior most in the emergency unit. Resource lead, you cannot have anyone better than your head nurse. Head nurse of the shift, head nurse of the hospital, because she has all the resources with her. She knows where are the medicines kept, she knows where are the equipments kept, she has all the workers working under her. So I don't think so anyone can be a better resource lead than a head nurse. Security lead, because crowd control is very important, patient movement is very important, so security is your security of the hospital. And incident commander, as I've already discussed, administrators, because they can they incident commander has to liaise with a lot of people, with clinical lead, with resource lead, with security lead, and with the pre-hospital people. Therefore, incident commander should be from someone from administration, who is the director of emergency services. By director, I don't mean the emergency doctor, but a RMO in charge of the hospital or medical superintendent. Okay. Now, I'll go and ask you, discuss with you the step 1 and 2 triage points. Now, what is step 1 and step 2? See the pick on the right side. T is the triage point. Okay, so outside your emergency, the emergency room is the one which has a red photograph on top of it. Outside your emergency, you will keep a triage point where ambulance, private vehicles, people coming by walking, people coming in their own car are coming one after the other, one after the other. Okay, you can keep a very young doctor out there with the assistant. No need to do anything else except walking or on stretcher. Can you see blue shoes or red stretcher? Only this is triage 1 rule. I am talking of emergency standard crisis of care. Nothing else. His job, that job is only, even a senior nurse can do. Whether the patient has arrived walking or whether the patient has arrived on the stretcher. If the patient has arrived on the stretcher, he will go inside your red triage. If the patient has arrived walking, like those 4 or 5 cases which I have shown in the beginning, then those will go in, green triage. Now you will say, where is the green triage? The entire emergency unit became red triage. Just now she said. Then where is the green triage? Now that depends upon your next. Suppose your emergency is a standalone big building. Next to it is a big hall, or your OPD halls. See, we have not touched OPD till now. You have OPD halls which are next to emergency. Okay, that has to become your green triage. You have to keep some staff over there also, and there you have to send these patients. Those who are, only one thing I am doing on step 1 triage, and that thing is walking, not walking. I am not doing anything beyond it. I'm not checking anything, because if I start checking blood pressures, pulse oximetry, GCS, AVPU here, then patient will die, and there will be 100 more ambulances behind. So walking, non-walking, and move to green area. Green area can be near to your emergency department but should not be your emergency department. And red area, which is your entire emergency department. Okay, now I will show you what triage we follow in every day, in daily routine. It is a different triage. In this is mass casualty interagency integrated triage tool. Okay, the first initial triage point, T1, walking, non-walking. Walking patients, please follow the this. Walking patient, triage green. After going inside that green, see, sometimes he may have a vascular injury. Let us say a patient had a shrapnel of something going through the femoral artery. He had pressed the bleed and came walking limping, and he was sent to green area. So there should be a second triage also. That should be there inside the green, where some doctor will check, assess on red criteria. Now here you will check by A, B, C, D rule. A is for airway, whether the patient is able to speak, airway is patent. B is for respiratory distress. C is for either no pulse, capillary refill time more than 3 seconds, and major hemorrhage. And D is for altered mental status, anything which is not alert. Anyone who is not alert is altered. Okay, any GCS less than 15, any will be altered. Okay, unresponsive. And if there is a major burn which is more than 40% of body surface area, now that we have to learn how to calculate the burn. Okay, and it can also be clinician concern. So first triage point, suppose I am standing and I send the patient to green, but the clinician over there thinks, no, this patient should go to red. Then he should write concern and send the patient for the red zone. Okay. Now, if the patient was not walking, let us follow this straight path, then the patient has to go to red. Okay. Red category patient there will be a triage 2 here. Once the moment he is there going to red, at the gate of red, there will be another second triage. Now, what is second triage about? So there at second triage, he will see vitals. If the vitals are not, someone can have red criteria, but vitals may be stable. He may not die immediately. You can have some time. Now, who are those patients? He had a rib fracture, 5 rib fractures. Saturations are requiring oxygen, little, but he will not die. There is no life and limb threatening, but he is not able to walk. Someone has a tibial fracture. Okay, there is nothing. There is no open, already dressed by EMTs in the periphery or first hospital. He will not die, but he cannot walk. So according to the triage 1 person, he has to be triage red. So at the red gate also, second triage will happen, in which he will be shifted to yellow. Now yellow where to form? Red is entire. So yellow can be some of your beds of red, which you can give to yellow, because these patients are the same. Okay. So, and again, there can be a reassessment. Yellow clinical lead can say, no, I am concerned, I want this patient back to red. Then he can again send. So triage is very dynamic. Okay. What I want you to request you to understand is green, red, and yellow. Now comes the most important. Suppose a patient reaches dead to you. Started from that place by paramedics and he was alive. Bus accident, overturned. By the time he reaches to your emergency in the red initial triage 1 point, he was dead. What will you do? So what should we do? should we tell them, oh, go, your patient is dead, sorry? We can't do in mass casualty. There are forensic people involved. It is a medical, we have to have a medical legal team inspecting what happened and all. So we will follow the same dictum. On stretcher, red. Walking, green. So someone who is dead is on stretcher, he has to come inside red triage. Now you may think this is stupidity. Why do you want to take? But this is standard of care. Mass casualties work like this. You have to take this patient in red, and from the red, clinical lead, your senior most emergency medicine clinician, will certify that yes, he is dead and can shift him to morgue. That is gray criteria. But outside your emergency unit, if a dead patient has arrived, after activation of your MCM plan, no patient can be declared dead. I hope I am clear to you. Though who are blue patients? Blue are those whose futility is there. Okay, someone had DCM, dilated cardiomyopathy. His ejection fraction already was 25-30%. Now he has fallen. His hypotension is bad. His brain is herniating out. You can't do that much things. You are short of medical interventions. So just put him on oxygen, give him some painkiller, and you can send him to some ward. What we do mistake sometimes is to treat them as red cases. Medical futility, palliative care, and curative treatment beyond current capacity are all blue patients. But you have to have a legal framework. Till you don't have the document, obviously all of us are so worried who will come and do a case on us. So we treat them as red, but as per this, they should be treated as blue. So we have gone through a lot, and now we will fast try. See, this was the I was telling you that how to assess these people. And step 1 I have told you, step 2 I have told you. Step 2 is in the red, step 2 is also in the yellow, where yellow, now you can see in the green, everywhere there is a step 2 triage. Okay, so this is what is followed. Okay, what is CABC? CABC is when the first thing which you do is catastrophic hemorrhage. The second is airway. The third is breathing, and fourth is circulation, where you check for radial pulse and check for capillary refill time. But first thing you assess is catastrophic hemorrhage. Okay, so what do you do in red zone? Red zone patients will not be walking. That is why if you see that the picture shows a patient who is not walking, and you will do his resuscitation and you will do stabilization. Whereas green zone, who are walking, may need fracture issues, splinting, may need bandage for their wound, will develop some ear problems, tinnitus, because they have trauma, a lot of eardrum ruptures and all. So they will need some otoscopy and all, and you will need to give them pain medication, tetanus. So a lot of medicines can be given. Okay, fluid and all can also be given. Okay, so coming to this MCM plan activation, I will just cover it again. First thing is evacuate your SET is there, SET. First thing is security. Security should ensure crowd control internally as well as externally. I have given you 2 pictorial representations. The clinical lead should evacuate the emergency unit, and the triage in charge, who becomes the triage in charge after designated by the clinical lead only. Okay, he moves to the triage point and never leaves the triage point till the code is called off or he is relieved by someone else. Okay, now this is a picture of pictorial representation. So the triage officer has reached. I hope you are able to see on your this, and see what is this he is having some bands, and he is having some folders. There is a box with some folders. His job is only triage them Whether and how will he try it? In the first thing, will he need all these bands? No. His job is only to see walking, non-walking. The walking he will send to the green zone, the non-walking he will send to the red zone. Okay, so these all bands will be only left for two bands, red and green. Triage point 1. Okay, now what are these folders? So what when you don't have a plan, what happens? Patient comes, attendant comes with him, doctor will start ask him to go and get an OP card. Okay, go and get your card done, go and get your card done. Now what is happening? They on the card line, on the person who is giving those cards, there is a long line, and everyone is worried because everyone patient is there and they are worried and they are shouting, and they are making a lot of ruckus over there, and someone is media is taking pictures over there, how crowd was bad, how chaotic it was. So what WHO suggests, it says that you should have some your numbers are there. No, everyone has a patient number. That number should be there. uh, let's say in a year I see 1,000 disaster cases. The 1,000 numbers should be unique numbers. Just like we buy a car and we want to have a unique number paying something, same way 1,000 numbers folders should be there in the kit for triage 1. The moment triage clinical lead says you are the triage officer, the resource lead nurse should give them those 100 folders, and those folders should have those unique numbers, and those bands which is there with her should have that unique number, and they can keep on giving it to this. And security lead should not allow anyone till the person does not go through the triage officer. Very clear. Okay, once they go through the triage officer, then only they should be allowed. So this is how stepwise it is being done, and I'll move forward and just trying to check it out. So if suppose as an incident commander you came to know that there is a bomb attack at a shopping mall in your near to your hospital, then when will you notify the entire teams, your security lead, your clinical lead, or when the patient will enter? No, when immediately you have to notify. Okay, so you should not wait with you, okay, let me find out who all the cases, what is being managed, what is happening, because heightened readiness should start immediately. Now if suppose you again as an incident commander you want to activate the plan, so when will you activate the plan? When your threshold is reached. You know that I cannot take more than 20 cases, and 20 have already arrived. Okay, full activation will be started. And one thing, this is very, very important. Incident commander will get lot of phone calls. Okay, secretariat, ministerial people will call, press will call, police will call. So many people will call asking them that what is the capacity of emergency. Should he or she tell to everyone? So which stakeholders would you like to inform your functional capacity? See, if you inform the press, immediately the next headline on the local news channel would be, this hospital does not have beds for patients. Correct? So we are liable only to talk to EMS services or other hospitals in your area. Because it might be possible that few of your cases which were already in emergency unit, you might be shifting to those hospitals which you have MOU. Now these are very international talks things. I don't think so in India any hospital has any MOU with any other hospital that in disaster we will take your help. I am sure I am correct. If I am wrong, do tell me. Okay, just give me another 10 minutes and I will finish this off. Okay, now you know de-escalation is important, and you know that once the last patient has arrived you can de-escalate. Okay, now if suppose there was, and crowd control is very important, not only internally, externally. If you will not do crowd control, then your safety, your safety, your patient movement, all will become affected. Okay, then these are, see what I have written as in white boxes are different possibilities. Okay, so don't think that all of them are correct. The what is correct, this will be uploaded. You can always check these questions in the website later of Netflix. I'm just trying to say that suppose there is a press meet. So you can get a call from a local minister that he wants to come and visit all the patients, and this minister and that minister. So what happens is, I hope I don't get calls myself, but you have to be very anonymized data. See, if you have seen how data was given after a recent Red Fort blast, they followed it, disaster management MCM plan to the dictum, to the right thing. Huh? It was a very anonymized data which was given. The photographs of those who were very sick were not revealed, because these are the ways it works. Okay, and if there is if you are incident commander and your hospital administration says that, oh, we will take over all this, then you can give him information, and you can ask the hospital administration, means another administrator can take over, give them all the necessary information. In it is a teamwork. Don't keep everything to yourself, because if you will keep everything to yourself, you will be overwhelmed. So just follow the document to the core. Okay, now this I will leave now. So what are there? You have to have a family debriefing room, your waiting area. All the family members are not supposed to come inside in your emergency and disturb. Only if the patient is minor, pregnant, elderly, or has altered mental status, then you can have one attendant, but beyond one attendant is not allowed. You have to have a spokesperson. You cannot allow anyone to talk. No one should talk. And please, no one should be allowed to keep the incident on their personal profiles. This is something we all have to develop, and I'm sure once we develop, entire next generations will develop. Okay, social media is not to discuss about how this plan was managed, how bad it was. No, that brings that people don't stop believing in each other. They stop believing in hospital services, and we all have to make sure this doesn't happen. Okay, now clinical lead, the senior most, he is trying to do everything. He is doing the step 2 triage in the red zone. He is also seeing that green zone patients, if they are red by mistake, they have gone there, they can come back. He is also telling the incident commander, these many patients have come to me, are red. He is also checking the triage officer outside. So clinical lead is the most important person, and that is why he should be the most senior staff in the clinical staff in the emergency unit. Okay, you only will nominate the triage in charge. Don't start doing triage yourself. Keep yourself free. See, when we are short in staff now, then we tend to over do multiple roles, and that is how I think so our generation has come. Again, I'm putting this word, that we have been taught, so we keep on doing a lot of things together, but it doesn't work the same in disaster. You have to do what is your work. Okay, so most unique is incident commander. He cannot take anyone's work because he has his own work. And second is clinical lead. So don't start doing triage yourself. You have to nominate a triage in charge, but yes, those who are coming inside the red zone, it is your responsibility to say, oh yes, this is a red case, I have to resuscitate him. You have to ensure that whosoever gets resuscitated is going back, right patient to right place. Now, right place, I will tell you what do I mean by right place. Okay, the right place means red patients where they are either life threatening or limb threatening. Correct? So those who are life threatening, they will go to ICUs, HDUs. Those who are limb, or sometimes to OTs if there is a head injury. Those who are limb threatening will go to the operation theaters for any vascular injury to be repaired, for any major pelvic fracture to be fixed. So life and limb threatening patients will go to only two places, that is either OT or to ICU. Whereas so it is the clinical lead who will decide which patient will go where. Okay. And then how is the work done in different zones? Now we have a red zone where all the non-walking patients were coming. We did a second triage in the red zone and we decided that, oh, this patient is red because he is not walking, but his vitals are stable, so he can go to yellow. And the clinical lead gave a little 10% of his beds for yellow. He's adapting to the situation. Okay. And everyone is listening to him because he's the senior most clinical lead. Okay. Now, apart from that, those who were walking were going to green. There is another one staff over there who is deciding that I have a concern, I think so he should go to red, and he is communicating to the clinical lead of red zone and sending back the patient. So this is how things will work. Okay. There will be patients who are blue, those who will be palliative, those who are beyond the capacity, they will remain on blue. There will be patients who have come dead and will go to the morgue after entering through the red zone. No one will go to home without or go to morgue directly from outside in disaster plan. This is very, very important. That is why I am stressing it again and again. Okay. This is what I have already discussed with you. And there are two approaches which are very important. How do you treat the patients in red zone? Now, red zone is there. Now, see, number of beds do not define what is your capacity. Number of doctors define your capacity. Correct. So, there, have you seen those Ferrari car races and all? There is an approach called as pit stop approach. The car comes, everyone works on the changing the wheel, and everyone knows their work, and that is called as a pit stop approach. So suppose these three beds which are there in the picture, which have one doctor and one nurse next to it. Patient will come, they will fix all the issues of resuscitation and stabilization. Please mind it, there is nothing else to be done in red zone. They will fix it, and then yellow door will open and that patient will go out. They will stay on these beds only, and that means even when there are 6 beds in the picture, only 3 are red, because only on 3 bed you have a doctor nurse. This is pit stop approach. The next patient will be brought to that bed for getting them to resuscitate. Whereas mobile team approach is something we always do. Now, overworked doctors of India. First we will see A, then we will go and see B, then we will go and see C, then we will forget something in A. That is the practical reality, and we cannot run away from it, that we always do a mobile team approach and not the pit stop approach, which is found to be much more better. Okay. So we have red triage, works on clinical judgment only in disaster, no x-rays. You can do point of care tests, but no labs, no CTs, and even no CPR if the patient arrests, because you are in a disaster. You have multiple cases waiting. And if you do not have the number of people, doing a CPR also is not indicated, because that will take away hands who could have saved more patients who would benefit from medical interventions. This is very important. Now you can always say that, oh, patient has a head injury. If I don't do CT, how will I know whether I will operate or not? Correct. Neurosurgeon needs a CT. But when will he need? Red will stabilize, resuscitate, hand it over to neurosurgeon. Now, that is what I said. When you start de-escalating, neurosurgeon might be working in full capacity. But if you start sending the patient from the red triage to CT, get him back to the red triage only, then your bed, only 3 beds were there in that picture. That bed will continuously have the same patient. How can you take the next patient inside? So you have to get it admitted under neurosurgery, give it over to them, move it to their ward or some other bed, because the entire emergency unit has become red, and then get the next patient. Okay. So this I have already discussed with you, so I'll not do. So it is so time sensitive that if you will not triage the walking from those who come on the stretcher from step one triage is very very important, walking and non-walking, then many of the patients will die or lose a limb. Okay. So please don't focus on the walking patients. They can be managed, they can again be retriaged back, but focus should be on the red patients who are non-walking and are on trolleys. This we have discussed. Time is short. So I told you red patients will only go to operating room and ICUs, blue will go to wards, yellow will go to wards. If there is no sign of life, it will go to morgue after coming into the red triage, and green patients can be discharged. Okay. So yellow, this picture only shows you that yellow beds can be made inside the red zone only. Till now, if you see all my other photographs, they were colored only red and green. But this time I put a yellow because we have now understood what are yellow cases. They were on the, again I will just say, they were on the trolley, but they were, vitals were stable. Okay. So if we have this patient who has no major bleed, so triage 1, because she came on in the stretcher, this lady was triaged red. Now I, if you are, suppose I am standing on the second triage and the on the triage 2 of red zone, where will I triage this patient? I will give, please think of your answer, keep it to you, and I will tell where I will triage this patient. So there is no major bleeding, the airway is open, but the saturations are 90% with respiratory distress. Okay. So there is a life threatening situation is there, therefore I will triage her to red only and not to yellow. She first time red, second also in the red zone. Coming to this male, elderly male, no major bleeding, but because he came on wheelchair, sorry, trolley, stretcher, he was taken inside. And now you see what is the, there was no major bleeding, airway is open, respiratory distress is present, respiratory rate is how much, only 4, heart rate is how much, only 22, saturation unable to manage, unresponsive, because we are not able to talk presently. But you will agree with me that whatever is your present resources, you cannot save him. So from the second triage point, he will be triaged blue. He will be triaged blue because we cannot save this patient in the current scenario. We will put him on an oxygen mask and shift him to the ward. Okay. Like pit stop approach, here in green patients we have a conveyor belt approach. All you know, na conveyor belt, airports, that the belt keeps on going. So conveyor belt means that the patient will, because they are walking patient, they will move from one treatment station to other. Like they can go to first to retriage, then to wound dressing, they can go for ENT examination, orthopedic examination, some psychosocial supports if a social worker is there, some oxygen therapy, and then discharge station. So it is like a conveyor belt approach. So you have to make your green like this. You have to give tables to all of these departments sitting in a big circle or a big different rooms, and patients by line can go to each of them. Or they can again be a mobile team approach. Patient is on one sitting at one place, whereas clinical providers are moving from one place to other. So all of this is not possible, friends, till you do not have daily aside discussion, mandatory training sessions, and under, using a lot of posters, cases to understand that any day when disaster comes, it is your basic preparedness which will help. So that is why I hope we do this. This is our 2018 18 session on where we did a bomb uh, uh, we mock drill. These colored bombs were there, and all of these are actors, and those actors have not come from outside. They are our own nurses, and beautifully they have worked. And this is the backside of my emergency department as Nizams. Okay. So, friends, safety doesn't happen by accident, and I hope I have been able to give you a little idea of how to put up a step one triage, how to work in red zone, which patients are yellow, how to what approach in red zone pit stop, what approach in green zone conveyor belt, and who should be your team members, and what are the operational phases of NCM. I hope I have done that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful presentation and summarizing a lot of information in this 1 hour 15 minute session.
Thank you
Uh,
so much.
have received a few questions, but a lot of appreciative comments in the comment section as well.
Thank you.
If there are any more questions, please share them in the comment section right now, and I can ask ma'am on your behalf.
So I was just reading a question. So yes, see, when volunteers, everyone wants to help. That is in our innate nature. Huh? So we want to go there, but where should you go? What we want to rush inside the red trash because everyone loves thriller action, but that is not the place. Like you have a family zone, like you have a media room, same is for collecting all the people, because a little idea has to be there what we are doing. So you have to meet the clinical lead or incident commander and ask him where you have to be available. Like orthopedics will come, they should be available partly in the operation theater and partly in the green zone. So if all of them rush inside this, then it is difficult. Okay.
Ma'am, Dr. Tahir has asked, are there any life-threatening conditions that walk-in patients can have which can make them appear stable?
Okay, so there is definitely someone who, see, people can have MI also. So if someone comes out of emergency situation, you can have heightened sympathetic response, and there have people who have can have MI. There can be people who have a blunt injury to chest and myocardial rupture also, but initially they will be stable. So they will have soft vitals. Soft vitals means that they will not be very stable, but uh, that is how they will behave, because they want, in emergency, what you want the first doctor to see you first, because life, you are worried of, everyone is worried of their life, and so you may behave like a green. So that is what I think, so that life threatening situations like extradural hemorrhage is there, someone fell down, had an EDH, there is a lucid interval, he may appear normal, but the moment you send it in green zone, he may have altered mental status. So there are, right from head to toe, multiple conditions are there. That is why there is a triage too, which will check all these things.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is by Dr. Jayashree. If we do not have our own blood bank and it is outsourced, can we take a mass casualty?
Okay, so uh, the document does not say so. The document wants a blood bank, but then saving life can is possible. You can at least open a green triage and not the red triage. So you can tell that we are ready to take the green patients. Everything is important. So with small cuts and all, which that is what I'm saying, that the document should be there. The document will tell you don't have a blood bank. We will not be able to take red patients, but we are ready to take up green patients.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think these are all the questions that have come in. If there are any more questions, you can please type them in this comment section or after the session is made a replay again. so that I can share them with ma'am and have them answered for you. Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again. I think
Thank
that
you.
brings
Thank
us
you
to
so
the end
much.
of this session and the
Thank
Q&A part.
Yeah, and as always, I have taken 15 minutes more. Thank you so much. And at MCM plan of WHO is freely downloadable. Please download it. Do those MCQs which are part of it. It is very, very important. A lot of things will be cleared um, with it. Queries will be cleared. So thank you a lot. See you all again. May this new year be best for you.